So we're very fortunate today. I'm Nancy Grasmick. I'm the former state superintendent of schools in the state of Maryland for 20 years, and I'm currently the co-director of an innovative program for leadership in special education at the Kennedy Krieger Institute. I'm very proud to be surrounded by such talent today. And so I'd like to introduce the people who are here and will be speaking this morning. Ali Smith is the co-founder and executive director, he is right down at the end of the table, of the Holistic Life Foundation. He assumes all of the administrative responsibilities for that organization, and they serve over 7,500 youth per week. And these individuals that I'm introducing have just extraordinary backgrounds, and I would direct you to your program to really read the extensive bios on each one of them. He's joined today by Vance Benton, who is the principal of Patterson High School in Baltimore City. He's been serving as a principal at several different levels in several different jurisdictions for 20 years. He has a very, very diverse school, and he is the first African American in the long history of Patterson High School to be the leader of that school. And so they will be discussing how they have worked together to enhance opportunities for students at Patterson High School in Baltimore. We are pleased to have with us an outstanding researcher, Jacque Gamino, who is the director of Adolescent Reasoning Initiatives at the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas at Dallas. She has more than 10 years of research experience. She's the director of Brain Health Adolescent Reasoning, the Reasoning Initiative. She's really on the cutting edge of research into the practical application within our schools of this kind of information. And she is joined, who will be with us in a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce him, Jonathan Smith, who's the principal of the Thomas Brown Middle School in Dallas. And he is a person who is implementing and benefiting, his students benefiting from the outcome of this program. It's a research-based intervention for teenagers. There are 50,000 youth with advanced reasoning skills as a result of the implementation of this research, and which has had a great impact on enhancing their academic skills. And these are students, many of them, living in circumstances of poverty. And I would also say that for Vance Benton's population at Patterson High School. So a tremendous focus on these innovative ideas and how they're enhancing learning for the students who are in these schools. So we'll begin with Ali Smith and Vance Benton in terms of the work that's being done in Baltimore.
Good morning, everybody.
Check one. Good morning, everybody.
We're just going to start with a little background on the Holistic Life Foundation in Patterson High School. The Holistic Life Foundation was founded by myself, my brother, and a friend of ours from college, Andy Gonzalez. Fresh out of college, we decided we wanted to do something to change the world, and the Holistic Life Foundation was what came out of that. My brother and I grew up in West Baltimore, right in the heart of where the Freddie Gray uprisings happened, a block over from North and Pulaski for anyone that's from Baltimore. So we grew up as meditators. Our parents were heavy into contemplative practices when we were children. Our dad was heavy into hatha yoga, so we meditated every morning before school. Literally every morning was meditation and Woody Woodpecker and Scooby-Doo, and then off to school.
There you go.
And it was just a normal part of our lives. It wasn't something we shared with our friends because, I mean, you can imagine growing up in West Baltimore in the early 80s, no one else was really meditating. Actually, not many people were really meditating at all. So it was some seed they planted as we were children. They also sent us to Friends School of Baltimore, Quaker School, which was heavy around there was a lot around reflection. There was a lot around taking a pause before you acted. There was a lot around celebrating diversity, but also celebrating the unity in all people and stewardship. And a lot of those things helped to kind of shape and mold the things that we were going to do later in life. We started the Holistic Life Foundation in 2001. In 2002, we started doing programming for a small group of fifth grade boys at Windsor Hills Elementary School. And we knew we wanted to teach our practice that we had learned to other people. Because we saw what it did for us, and it was our practice was heavier at that point was yoga, meditation, some mindfulness practices, and a lot of breath work. We started off with just the three of us trying to do everything. It was a very co-founder-led organization. As things grew, we realized we had to kind of grow and develop and change. Our model has shifted to where the three of us are in the office almost all the time, and we have a program staff of around 40 now. Most of them are former students of ours. That group that we started with in 2002 at Windsor Hills Elementary School, about half of them are still with us, and they're like 27-year-old young men who have been teaching yoga and mindfulness for the past, some about 7 years. They're a really good group. We believe in a reciprocal teaching model in all the programs that we do, so wherever you go and see our programs, you'll see the kids in the front leading, and that's been helping us get out into the communities and make a huge shift in communities. It's hard for us to get the parents in, but if we send their kids home as teachers, they're more likely to have a stressed out parent come in the house and start yelling at them and stop them and get them to pause and sit them down and show them how to breathe or how to meditate. And that's really what's making the shift outside of the school buildings from what we're doing. We did the first randomized controlled trial on yoga and mindfulness in urban youth in a partnership with Johns Hopkins and Penn State University. If you go to our website, you can get the scientific paper on that. It was published in the Journal of Abnormal Child Psychology. We got great results around rumination, around just behavioral control and emotional awareness and stress levels. Like I said, it's on our website if you're interested. I guess another big thing that we started off with our focus on underserved schools in urban populations in Baltimore City. But as things have gone on, we realized that everybody's stressed out. Everybody can use these practices. So we, like Nancy was saying, we do serve about 7,500 kids a week in Baltimore City public schools, but we also work in private schools in Baltimore, the surrounding counties. We're traveling a lot to help people set up programs in other areas around the country, and we do workshops and trainings nationally and internationally. That's a little bit of background on HLF.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I didn't grow up with yoga. I never knew about meditation or any of that. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I got to Baltimore in 2011 to serve as the first African-American principal in the schools at that time, 77th year or so. So it was a big task. We got about 1,200 students, about 140 faculty and staff, 80 teachers, and that I have 4 administrators under my supervision. And I run the school pretty much like a school district because it's just so many people, so many children, so many programs that we had, so many community partnerships that was there when I got there in theory. So we had to clean that up, and if you're a partner with Patterson, then you're actually doing something for children and not just having our name on your brochure. So we had to clean a lot of stuff up. We had to clean a lot of misguided adults who are in front of children. We had to change a lot of that. And along the way, I started to discover that there was some underlying issues going on with children in Baltimore City. As it was stated earlier, our school is the most diverse high school in the state, probably along this East Coast. We about 35% international students. And our students come from around the world, literally. And we have about maybe 20 or so different languages in our building. We have several interpreters in our building. And it's a serious melting pot. And I'm very fortunate to be the leader of a school like that. So when I got there, when you first get to a school, you got to work through the kinks and figure out your place in this and what needs to be done. What's good, what's working, what's not. But along the way, it got to the children. So I think in my second year, we did an impromptu study with the students, with a teacher who has since retired now. And we wanted to know how often our children dealt with death. So we just did a study. And we put it out to everybody. I think we did it through our English classes because everybody has English. And when the results came back, it was pretty daunting to see just how many children are experiencing death and multiple deaths. And we asked the question in regards to your intimate family, someone in your household, your mother, father, brother, sister, uncle that's in that household, or a best friend's household, or right on your street, not your community, not your neighborhood, not the city, but intimate spaces. And we discovered that over half experienced at least one. And it was about maybe, I think 60%, no, check it, maybe about 40% experienced two. And there was one student in particular who experienced 6 deaths. And mind you, because I have children from around the world, I have children who fled their country. I have children who are refugees. I have children who had their villages massacred before they were able to come to the country. So the stress was real. So when we did this study and we found this out, the next question was, okay, well, what do we do with this? And as the universe works, and some of you who believe in it, the universe is going to bring you what you need. If you put it out there, it'll come. And lo and behold, Ali came with a mutual business associate. And this business associate felt that Vance would be open to hearing Ali and considering the program. I didn't know what it was about when they first came in, but I gave a quote from Star Wars, Yoda, because I think someone mentioned, well, let's try it. And I said, we're not going to try it. Either we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. We don't try. So then when he heard that, and he a big Star Wars and comic book guy, we were linked at that point. And we knew we had to do this. So that first year, we went into it blindly with the notion that why not? Why not do it? Why not implement it? Why not try it? So we went into our first year. Check it. We went into our first occurrence of the program during that school year. So when they came to me, it was the school year had already began. Mm-hmm. So now we're kind of behind the 8 ball because you know how schools go. First time the school start, you got programs in place, and hey, we rolling, and we make it better. So when you bring something in the middle of the year, for the most part, is not going to be received.
And one thing that made it a little more difficult is that we were asking for academic time to be taken out of the schedule for a school-wide practice, where the entire school would pause and do a mindfulness practice for 15 minutes in the morning. We wanted the morning and the afternoon, but we only got the morning. We were okay with that just to get any amount of time. And we also wanted a space in the school where kids get referred during class time if they couldn't focus, if they were angry, if they were stressed out. And we would bring them down to the room. We could only get them down there for 15 to 20 minutes. Then they had to go back to class. Mm-hmm. We had never done a school-wide intervention before. To that point, we would go into schools and work with small groups of students who needed more support, or we do after-school programs or things along those lines. We had never done anything that large, and we had particularly as large as Patterson. Patterson's a huge school, and we were kind of we had one thing in mind, but when we got there and the rubber hit the road, it was something totally different. And I remember maybe like a week before we started was everything happened on the news.
Oh yeah. Well, we had children will be children, right? No matter where you are. There was a altercation that took place in the cafeteria, and if you have schools, the cafeteria is going to hold the largest amount of children at one time. So it was an unfortunate melee that took place, and this generation of children love to pull out their phones and video whatever. Unfortunately, a lot of the video is about negative occurrences. So we had to deal with that. But it was a good thing that we did have this program in place because now the staff is able to see, we need to do something, right? Because folks just don't fight each other and don't just engage in that type of interaction unless they're suffering something internal and they're lashing out. So we got to get to what's inside so that we can minimize those occurrences. So it was a good thing that they were at Patterson at that time. And as Ali stated, it was a daunting task, but I really didn't look at it like that. I really didn't. I didn't look at it being a daunting task, moving to Baltimore and leaving my wife and son in Cleveland until we were able to move down. It was something that's necessary. And anything that I take on, I'm not fearful of it because it's going to happen. And so we did. So we focused on the ninth graders first, just to get it going and get it implemented. And then we started to stress the importance of getting teachers to support it, because that was the main objective. If we get teachers to support it, it'll last. It'll be sustained.
And that was a little tricky to do because the teachers felt like we were taking away from their academic time. So I felt like most of the teachers kind of despised us when we walked in the building. We would walk into the office and there would be groups of teachers talking, and they would stop and like look at us. So we knew they were talking about us, but it was fine. We sat down with Vance and we talked a lot about what we were going to do about that. And a couple things we did were we kept engagement scores from classroom to classroom. And the teachers were the two highest engagement scores. We were working with a funder who had a retreat center over in Germany, and the teachers with the two highest engagement scores were going to get trips to Germany to go to a retreat. So that kind of helped. And then we went to
that really helped.
That really helped. And then I feel like the food helped even more. We would have full meals at every single staff meet, like literally a full meal at every staff meeting. And we would talk about the program, how things were going, and then we fed them really, really well. So teachers started to buy in more and more. And I think as teachers actually started to participate in the practice, there were teachers that actually got sold on it, and they were like, well, maybe there is something to this.
So when the Germany trip came about, right, so it was like, okay, Mr. Benton, how can we get teachers to refer students to us? So I don't know. Just keep at it, right? Just keep getting out there, keep going to the classrooms. And then they said, well, can we do a raffle? Sure. What are they going to win? A trip to Germany. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So we put it out there, the ones who have the most referrals, who are most engaged, and they're into a raffle, and two teachers, right?
Two teachers,
And one of them took my ticket because I wanted them to go. So I gave up my ticket to Germany so that the teachers can go. So that following year was the first year of full implementation from the start of the school year.
And one thing about year one, so we weren't sure how things were going to turn out. But I mean, we had to start keeping, like, most of our data that we were collecting when we were doing studies, it was around cognitive measures. And when we were looking at schools, it was are the kids happier? Are the kids not fighting as much? Like, what's going on? Are the kids, like, how's their inner life doing? And that's what we were concerned about, and that's what made us happy. We started looking at school-based numbers, so we were getting the school climate reports from Vance. And in that first year, when we looked at the numbers of suspensions went down, the number of fights went down, freshman promotion and GPA went up, and overall attendance went up. So we were very happy about those numbers.
So because of that, now you're getting central office, not necessarily support, but they're not bothering me. Because actually, when we talked about this on the way here yesterday, I didn't ask for permission. I didn't ask the district, can we do this, how it's done? I just did it. And now they want other schools to do it. Because of what we've been able to do. So going into that first full year, the PD schedule for the week before students come, at the end of that week, I gave them the full day that Friday, and it was off campus. And they were fed that day as well. And they offered some adult beverages if you wanted to partake in those during that time. And the line was pretty long, so I guess they did partake in those opportunities. But that was a way to get the teachers away from the school, get them engaged in the practice, get them understanding what it's really, really about and how it can fit the need, and also give them some science to it as well. But we also had the teachers who went to Germany share their experience with the teachers. And that's when we started getting really, really buy-in from a multitude of teachers, because we were all together and we all left that occasion with the understanding that this is what we're going to do. So it wasn't about Mr. Benton is bringing this program and he's throwing it down our throats. It's about this is what we're going to do for our children at our school. And it was a success. But one of the main portions of the program is our ambassador program, where their staff trains students to become ambassadors so that those students can now engage in the practice in their classes with their fellow classmates, so that the staff don't necessarily have to get to every classroom. So now we got students who are able to engage in the practice in that classroom and lead it.
Because it's hard for 4 people to try to get to 60 classrooms and work with 1,200 kids. It was almost impossible. So I think the first year we may have had about 40 ambassadors, and we worked with them in the class in the Mindful Moment room. We also did an off-campus retreat for them for further training, and they kind of took it and ran with it. They did other programs at the school. They were doing outreach to their friends. They were trying to pull more people in, and I think that was another thing that helped us shift and get more students involved, was like them seeing people that were their age, that were their peers out in the classrooms practicing and participating, and it helped us get more and more people involved in the more and more students involved in the program.
And another way that we were able to actually get it out to the masses of people was to have it come through the PA system every morning. I think we started off with a recording, it did, and then we evolved to an actual person giving the instructions and whatnot for the meditation. But that helped, and I was telling their staff that if we do that, our children around the world listen to music almost all day, every day if they can. And you can't tell me that those messages that they hear constantly aren't embedded in their spirit and in their actions when they approach that situation that they hear in the music. So it was my thought that, well, if they hear mindfulness every day, whether they engage in it actually actively or not, they hear it every day. So they will be able to draw from it at some point in time whenever they need it, unconsciously. So we had over the PA every morning, and that really, really helped everybody to not avoid it. It's here, it's going to be here, and that helped the teachers to see that it was going to be consistent. And we worked it in the schedule where we added time to that second period, so that the second period teacher will get the same amount of time as that last period teacher got with her students, so that they wouldn't feel like they're being, taken away, their class time is taken away. So that helped. That helped teachers to really buy in and accept it and support it. And the notion was, if you don't engage in it, that's fine. Just have the opportunity there for the children. Don't teach during this time because it's not your teaching time. This is the mindfulness time. And if all you do is just leave the children with that space, that's all we needed for them to do. And for the most part, they did. But what happened was a lot of them got into it. So they started doing, I think we had yoga classes in the morning for teachers to come and engage in that, because we found out that a couple of them already did yoga, but they just didn't tell nobody. Right, so now they were at a space where they can share that, and they can say that, I do that too, and now to get others involved. So that really helped over the PA. But that following year,
one of our funders had the genius idea that we should take it off the PA, and we should train the teachers to try to be able to do the practice and have our staff in there, and it didn't work at all. Like, it was terrible for the program.
I told them it wasn't.
But it was one of our funders, so we kind of had to listen. And it was one of those things where engagement went down, and all those numbers that we were measuring in the first year, all those numbers shot right back up. And a lot of students didn't really know about the program. So it wasn't really a school-wide program anymore. It was 4 staff members going to classrooms and trying to work with as many students as possible. And they were maybe hitting about 10% of the school. So the program pretty much disappeared for that year. And then we realized that we needed to shift it back to the loudspeaker, over the PA system, and that's what we did in year 4.
But in addition to that, they had to revisit their staff.
Oh yeah,
that was in my building, because we went to meeting every month, whether I met with them or their mother, who is the
program
director, every month, like any other program, so that I can give them my feedback and what's going on. And what happened towards the end of that year, they got the understanding that something has to change. And it's not about it being on the PA or not, it's about the staff. And if the staff is not committed to doing it with fidelity and actually doing what I'm telling you to do, because their expertise is the practice. My expertise is I can run a school with whatever is in it. And I'm telling them this is how we do it. And when the staff is not actively engaged in it, 100% is going to fall off. So they had to revisit their staff, and they had a whole new staff last year, which was our 4th year. A whole new staff with a whole different attitude and a whole different direction from them. as well as from me. When we first started, it was a mutual agreement. Hey, you want a program? You want to do a program? We need a program. We give you a space. Come on in. Let's make it happen. And eventually, I got to thinking that, well, if they're trying to secure funding from other folks and they're in my building doing this program, well, how would it look if I'm not supporting them financially as well in terms of supporting their program? So we started to give them a small little bit after that third year, just as an act of good faith in what they're trying to do for our students and our staff. So that has worked out very, very well. So going into our fourth year last year, we started to now branch off, not just in the classrooms, but we started to now branch off into the athletic teams. And now we do it with the athletic teams. And I don't know if mindfulness was the reason, but our basketball team won the state championship last year. Our softball team won the city championship last year, first time in school history. It wasn't because of mindfulness, but
It was because of mindfulness.
Okay. All right. And our JROTC program, they also did well in their drills. I think they took third place, first time in school history, but they implement the mindfulness in their PT. So it's a part of their curriculum now. And this will be the second year that they will have it in their curriculum, where the children in our ROTC program will have mindfulness as a part of their program. So I'm excited about that. Going into year 5, you guys, which is this year, it's pretty amazing that we're in year 5. And I've had the opportunity to travel with them. We're going to Kentucky tomorrow. And I'm amazed at the fact that, this room here, how many people are engaged and interested in this practice and how it will work in schools. And I am very, very proud that we have it in our school. And I really didn't realize that it was big until I got out, because my thought was the children need it, it's here, why not do it? And we'll figure out how to do it as we do it, instead of being scared to do it and then not do it at all. I didn't want to do that. So in year 5, you guys, we have a lot of expectations from them, their staff, as well as our students. And what we really want to focus on this school year is to build the capacity of the children. Because if we do that, it will last forever, and it'll last forever within them. And the one example I can give you guys, because at schools, everybody know when you have a program, the first question you're asked by somebody is, does it work? Second question is, what's the data? Right? Because they need something to say, this is why I'm doing this. Well, there wasn't no data that I looked at. I just knew we needed to do this. And I can give you any type of data that you want. You can go onto the state website and look at data on Patterson High School. And I can say, well, yeah, our graduation rate improved every year because we have mindfulness. Or I can say our graduation rate increased every year because I'm there. I'll take the first one, right? But all in all, this school year, we're going to become an intensive site for our district. Our district is moving to a blueprint where if you have something at your school that is dynamic, earth-shattering, and they want you to be an intensive site where people can come and learn about what you do and how you do it. So our school, if it's approved, will be an intensive site for the Baltimore City School District, in which schools and staffs can come to our school, view the program, ask questions, and see how we do it. 2 schools in particular, I think one is in Maryland, one is in Kentucky. They came to visit Patterson last school year, and I saw them at the National Principals Convention in Philadelphia this past summer. And they were excited to see me. They were excited because, Mr. Ben, we're going to do our program next year. We got our room together, our principals on board, and it's because of you and because of your staff and our visit with you that gave us the motivation and the courage to go ahead and do it. So I'm very, very proud of that. And hopefully we'll continue to do that and continue to inspire people to take a chance on something that's been around for thousands of years. And if it's been around for thousands of years, something is to it. But the biggest thing is getting those children exposed to the practice, getting them comfortable with it, And when I realized that we had something is when a student, and the room is located on the first floor, in the main floor of our building, the main entrance of our school building, and they're right there on that corner. And this particular day, this young man came to the room, and the staff wasn't in there. So this young man decided to sit down right in front of that door, right in that main hallway, right on that first floor, and he engaged in his mindfulness. And what was amazing about that is, A, he knew he needed to do this because he came to the room. He knew he still needed to do it, although they wasn't there. And he knew he needed to do it right now. But he had enough confidence and enough comfort to do it in a main hallway of a high school. Second part that was amazing, nobody bothered him. Nobody looked, stared, kicked his foot, tapped his head, nothing. They walked right by him. And this is a main hallway on the first floor of a high school with 1,000 or so children. Nobody bothered him. Why? Because they all knew what he was doing. They all know it's not crazy. They all are accepting to it, whether they do it or not. They know what's going on, and they respected it and kept moving. That's when I knew we had it. Now, for those of you who want to see or hear about data, I can give you that. But there is no data that can capture that moment. There's no data that can capture that moment. And that moment told me we're going to keep this. And it's going to be here forever. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm sorry for the interruption. I'm Jacque Gamino from the Center for Brain Health. At the Center for Brain Health, we work to help across the ages to understand, protect, and heal the brain. And we work with people of all ages because we know that our brains were developed and born to make connections, to think, to plan, to strategize, and to reason. And we are really born to learn. If we weren't always learning and adapting to our environment, we would not be here as a species. My emphasis in my research is adolescent reasoning, which is, of course, an oxymoron, right? But I think reasoning is an important thing to think about with kids. We've worked so hard in our schools and across public education to make sure that schools are equitable. But as a result, we have all these really high stakes tests that end up leaving kids being really good test takers, but not so good at reasoning and working in their life in order to understand and get the big picture. So really, no matter how you look at it, reasoning in adolescence is a bit of a dilemma. We know that they can reason and they can strategize and think about ways to break their curfew, think about ways to argue about their curfew, or things that are important to them like dress code. But when it comes to reasoning and making inferences in the classroom, it's a different story. I have a lot of teachers who tell me that their kids just don't know how to make inferences. And what I say to them is, these are teenagers. Aren't they not the masters of innuendo? Completely, you give them anything in the world and they will make it into sexual innuendo, right? So we know from brain science that the brain develops dynamically across the age span all the way up to age 25, and this is a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of this development to use the brain's plasticity. In particular, the frontal lobes, of course, are the seat of our reasoning, our higher order thinking skills, and so we really need to take advantage of this avenue of development in order to help our students develop the skills that can potentially last a lifetime. So our goal with our adolescent reasoning project is to take advantage of this enormous period of plasticity. And we've developed the Strategic Memory Advanced Reasoning Training Program in order to allow students to understand their metacognition and use the metacognition foundation to develop higher order thinking skills, not just when it comes to something they're really passionate about, but in life. So we use a very simple formula. It's based on the science of learning and cognitive neuroscience. We focus and help the students understand their abilities with metacognition, selective attention, chunking, inference, paraphrasing, and synthesis. And what we find is when we build this foundation of metacognitive skills, that they become higher order thinkers. They begin to understand how to abstract meaning from information, and they become critical and creative thinkers as well. We focus, once we've done the basics with those students, we focus on getting students to think about the bigger picture, to explore the meanings that are surrounding those details rather than just focusing on details. Because we know from cognitive neuroscience, we know from life that details in isolation have very little meaning. So I'll give you an example of that. And this is counterintuitive to a lot of the way teachers are taught to teach because they want to focus on the details first. But take this example. It's a little pixelated, and I apologize for that. It's a picture of a girl doing what? Fishing, yes, and she looks quite happy in this exploration of fishing. But there's not a lot you can infer other than that from this picture until you have the big picture. So this was actually a picture taken from Houston last week. So details in isolation are very insignificant and have very little meaning until you connect them to the big picture. So we're all about helping students gain efficiency with their brains by making those connections, by thinking about the big picture and digging deeper into information for the meaning. So this sounds all glorified, and okay, so how does this really apply to real life? Do we know it's making a difference? Because that's important, right? And it's not just about getting kids to think deeply. So we all have standardized tests in our states, and for the state of Texas, it's the State of Texas Assessment of of the assessment of, I forgot the other A. Academic knowledge, there you go. Or academic achievement, yeah. So this is data from one of our schools that is right on the border of between Texas and Mexico. So it's full of, probably 99% of the kids are ESL. We have a group of English language arts teachers who implement the SMART program in their schools, and we have several ELA teachers in the 8th grade who do not implement the program. So we looked at their data from their standardized testing. The light blue represents the children who had the SMART program versus the dark blue without. So we see a huge difference in passing rates in English. We see a huge difference in math. We see a huge difference in science. And that repeats itself for social studies. So those are the 4 core subjects that these 8th graders are tested in. And the only difference between these 2 groups, one group just happened to be in an English language arts class that had the SMART program, and we're learning these deeper thinking skills. So it's not just an English language arts program, it's a program that teaches thinking skills that can span the whole academic spectrum. We've been doing this program for about 10 years now. And we really started with an individualized study, working with students one-on-one. We moved into a randomized control study within a local middle school in Dallas. And then we gained funding, and we were able to do a research-led team in Dallas and Fort Worth area. And finally, we decided if we were really going to make a difference, we would have to start training teachers. So we began training teachers in 2011, and we have been doing that ever since. And we've also found schools that were willing to give us the time and the energy and the resources to be able to implement whole school programs. where everybody in the school gets the program. So we had funding that allowed us to take the program outside of Texas for a while, and that was very challenging to get a foot in the door when you're from Texas with people like Massachusetts, right? They're not all that willing to speak with Texans, because what could Texans possibly contribute to the conversation? But we were successful there. And what we found is that no matter where we went, that students were improving these reasoning abilities, and it was showing up in their testing scores and in some cases in their behavior as well. So our teacher training program is very intensive. It's in the summertime. We train teachers for 5 days, so they're with us from 9 to 3. And they learn how to, they learn about the learning of science. They learn how to implement the program, but they also go through the program as students themselves, so they can see the benefit that it makes toward them as well. We do this in our offices in Dallas at the Center for Brain Health. We work with teachers primarily from Texas now. We're hoping to re-expand and get into other states again. But we've been very fortunate to have great success with certain principals who support us and have found that this program is beneficial, because we ask for 10 sessions, 10 45-minute sessions in a 1-month period that those teachers have to take out of their content areas. So that's a lot to ask, and we realize that. But it's fun to see how well the students take to the program. We focus on engaging students and helping teachers learn to engage their students in different practices in the classroom. And we want them to, as teachers, be thinking at a deeper level as well, because we know when the teachers are thinking at a higher level, they're going to be demanding more of their students. So these are just a few of our students. We also, with our whole community schools, we have smart clubs, after-school programs where the students can practice these skills via a computer program. Most of our programming, though, is very low-tech, very similar to mindfulness in that you really can't learn it from a computer so much. It's hands-on. And so we work with our teachers very closely. We not only spend those 5 days with them, but we're there in their classrooms during implementation as well. So we visit them at 3 different times during those 10 sessions. And we collect data pre and post, as well as collecting the state data to help us understand how this is advancing children. So I'm going to turn this over to my friend and colleague, Jonathan Brown, who is from one of our smart community schools.
I'd like to say good morning to everyone. Please pardon my tardiness. We're dealing with the impact of student response to DACA today. So we're wanting to make sure that our students are safe in our state. So pardon my tardiness, but I wanted to say I'm very happy to be a part of the SMART program through the Brain Health, the UTD Brain Health. And when I entered T.W. Brown Middle School 3 years ago, the school had just been recently reconstituted by the state of Texas. And that means that basically the state of Texas took over and made the decision that the staff needed to be removed and start, afresh, to start over. The school is at the bottom 5% of the state. And so upon entering the campus, we had the opportunity to make some new hires. And 50% of the staff was brand new to teaching. That we brought in, and another 25% was brand new to secondary education. So we're really starting out with some brand new, eager individuals who, brand new teachers who want to change the world, right, and make this world perfect. And so while they did not come with a great background in pedagogy or understanding the development of the adolescent brain, or really knowing as much as they needed to know about their content, they came with a willingness to learn. And they did not come with heavy baggage from years of experience in the classroom, and so they were open to this brand new approach. And so what I really appreciated about the opportunity to work with Dr. Gamino is that most programs want to work with you while you're up, but she was willing to work with us while we were in the basement floor, and so we're very grateful for that partnership. What we actually had a chance to see over the 3 years that we've had a chance to work with the program is we've had 3-year increases in student achievement, academic achievement, and as was mentioned, we take what we call in Texas the STAR test, which would be the equivalent of many other state tests across our nation, and we went from being the bottom 5% of the state of Texas to actually in our district we have 40 middle schools, and we're now in the top 5 middle schools in the district. And our campus is a traditional neighborhood comprehensive campus, so it's not a magnet school, but now we're competing with magnet schools, and that's so exciting to see happen. One of the other things that we do in our district is we take student perception surveys. And for our teachers, that's 15% of their evaluation, what the students think about the class. And we've seen 3-year increases there. We've also seen staff climate surveys increase drastically, going from bleeding red to hunter green as it relates to the positivity of the climate on the campus. And now that's always also ranking in the top 5 of the district as a whole in all domains. So it's really exciting to be a part of that work. And what I really appreciate about this program is, like, anybody can come up with another test-taking strategy, right? I mean, there are test-taking strategies all over there. And what we've traditionally asked students to do is to memorize all of these acronyms, so that when they go into a test-taking environment, that they can, apply, whether it's "please excuse my dear Aunt Sally," or whether it's capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling, or whether, we have all of these different strategies that we require students to memorize. But what if we were actually preparing our students to be thoughtful about their thinking? And that's the shift. And when you see students critically thinking, it makes a huge difference as it relates to what's happening in the classroom. You get to that level of cognitive engagement that you want to see. So, I mean, we're well aware of research that there are 3 main areas of engagement in the classroom, one being behavioral engagement, which is great. I mean, they can sit in the classroom, they can fold their hands, and they can slant and look forward, and they can smile at you. But does that really mean that learning is taking place, right? So we've pushed past behavioral engagement, even to looking at social emotional engagement, which needs to be there. We recognize the importance of that, but getting to the cognitive engagement in the classroom is really what we wanted to see happen, and we're able to see that now. And it's something that it's very difficult to quantify, but when you can see the look in students' eyes when there's the cognitive wrestling going on, when they're actually thinking about their thinking, when they're actually able to synthesize the learning, that's when we're headed in the right direction. So we cast vision last year, and we told our students we want at minimum, and for our school this was huge, we wanted at minimum 80% in the 8th grade to we wanted at minimum 80% to pass the the state test at the minimum level, at least 80%, and we wanted we wanted at least 30% to score at the highest level of testing possibly. And our students just shocked us. They did 87% and 40+% as it relates to students performing at the higher levels. And so we're really, really excited about the program in the Dallas area, particularly at T.W. Brown Middle School. But I have the privilege now of being able to serve the high school in the local area, one of the local high schools, and actually get to take some of those same students that were with me at T.W. Brown and be able to track their progress as well at the high school level. And I'm really excited to see the data trends, as I know they will be positive as it relates to not only graduation rates, but post-graduation data as well.
So normally we work with middle schools. We work through 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. But with our partnership here with Mr. Smith, when he became the principal at Carter High School, he asked if we would consider working with 9th graders, and we'd actually done that in Florida. So we trained a group of his really awesome 9th grade ELA teachers, English Language Arts teachers, this summer. So we're looking forward to watching these students grow. So each of our grade levels, we've changed our program just a little to account for the development that's appropriate for their age. So we're always keeping in mind the brain development at any given age in order to best facilitate the program and make it a win-win for our students, because we know if we throw them into doing something that's above their developmental level, it's going to be such a struggle that they're going to shut down. They're not your higher SCS kids who are going to try to meet that challenge. They're just going to have that look on their face that they can't do this.
So I just want to ask a question, and I know we're okay, good. So we can invite questions from the audience, but I have a question I'd like to ask, and that is, given the success of the two practices and the research you've heard this morning, I'd like to ask the panelists, how do we embed this in teacher preparation? So it's not something that is extra as teachers have to go into the classroom, but rather these practices can be prepared to implement these practices that have demonstrated success. So I'd like to hear from Mr. Smith and Mr. Smith, and then the two of you. So
I know for us, it's a little easier to do outside of Baltimore. When we're doing programs in Baltimore, most of the schools want our staff in the school facilitating programming. When we leave the state and we're setting up programs, it becomes a lot easier because our staff doesn't live there. And a lot of what we do for the teachers is first around self-care. It's hard being a teacher. They want to learn a new tool and help share it with the kids, or they're stressed out and they don't want to share it with the kids. But if we can get them to see that these practices that we're teaching them are going to help them to be more present at school and at home, to not be stressed out and to reduce the burnout, then they jump into the practices. And then we're using kind of seamless ways to incorporate mindfulness into the school day without having to take time out of the school day. So it's stuff around using it for transitions from, say, lunch to learning, or from gym to learning, or recess to learning, or from one class to another, or a short breath break when the class seems to be getting a little stressed out or a little hard to manage. So exactly, just like that. So it's like we're trying not to make it a curriculum-based thing, but more of a cultural-based thing. We're trying to change school culture instead of getting them to incorporate something, but we're trying to get it to be involved in everything. I think one of the best things about Vance is that he's supportive of the program. One thing he failed to mention is that when you have a principal that has their own personal practice, it kind of resonates throughout the school. And Vance does have his own personal. It's not something that was there. I know when we first started the school, I would have to force him to come to the mindful moment room and meditate with me. And he would leave his radio on, and Vance, where are you? And I convinced him to turn it off, and that was good. And as we got into the practice, when on the days he was actually practicing with me, he didn't know this, but all the staff were like, thank you so much, Vance has a tendency to be a little high strung sometimes. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, just trying to get them to seamlessly kind of incorporate it into the entire school culture instead of trying to get them to kind of do lessons in the classroom has paid off a lot for us.
Dr. Gamino, would you like to talk about teacher preparation?
Well, we have talked with several universities, including our own, about including our program in teacher preparation. There doesn't seem to be a lot of room to add into all of what they already need to know about content and pedagogy, to include, unfortunately, brain science. But we hope that that will change. We hope that there will be a greater interest from young teachers. And as Mr. Smith pointed out, younger teachers are often open to the possibilities. But when we have very seasoned teachers who are in our program as well, a lot of times they also, they realize what students struggle with much more than the younger teachers. So I think that's an important aspect too, is the seasoned teachers realize there are struggles here, and the ways that we are teaching them based on the science of learning, that we can actually improve these struggles and make it easier for children.
Thank you. We'd like to open it up for your questions. We have a few minutes left, and we'd like to have you respond to the panelists by way of your questions. Yes.
So my question goes to Mr. Vance. When you were speaking earlier, you said that the school is very diverse and you have different countries from different countries.
Yes.
Not have English as a first language. So I'm thinking the mindfulness practice is delivered in English. So how do you accommodate?
Well, how do we accommodate? It's kind of like those children are very, very dynamic and they're very adaptive. So generally, it's repetition, right? So generally, you have the same message coming across, and in those classes, those teachers are a bit different than the other teachers across the campus. What I mean by that is they're like kindergarten teachers, touchy-feely and lovey and all that good stuff with their students, because they feel like these students need a little bit more love. So they were the first department that really took to it before everybody else, because I think they instinctively knew, they being the teachers, instinctively knew that these students need this because of the horrors that some of them have experienced. So just through repetition and seeing the movements, and hearing the calls or whatnot, they picked it up.
We have yes, right here.
I appreciate what you said about it shifting to like a school culture change versus a curriculum change. And a time when people want a quick fix, how do you help? Because listening to your journey, it took a couple of years, and I imagine every school that you look at, there's probably a little difference in how that comes out for each school. So how do you help get that big vision in place when you're not in place?
It's definitely a very slow process. We usually start with the champions at the school. We'll go in. I mean, first, it's always getting the principal on board. If we don't have the principal on board, no matter how excited we are about going to the school, we won't go there. And then it's selling the teachers on the practice and figuring out who those champions are. Once we sell the teachers on the practice and figure out our champions, then we can kind of press them and kind of get them to really buy in. And then we start working with the students. And then we focus on the classrooms with the champion teachers. And another thing we're doing is we're training a lot of people in the schools that aren't teachers to be the people in those rooms, like the mindful moment room, where it's the para-teachers or the social workers or anybody and everybody that's in the school that isn't a teacher that has a little bit of time to spend in there and can work with the students. So it's been that process.
Other questions? Yes.
So I helped found a nonprofit that teaches decision skills, decision science skills, and some of the reasoning type things that I think you were talking about. But what we discovered was we felt that there needed to be this mindfulness piece that went along with it. And I'm curious, really, for any of you, do you see a connection between the two?
I think there's definitely a connection, because if children are unsettled and so stressed that they can't learn and they can't benefit from the science of learning, then we're struggling to help bring them to that point as well. So I think it goes hand in hand.
I do too. I think last school year I was invited to present at the I forget what county, I think Howard County, and their principals, and they wanted to know about mindfulness. And I was surprised, this first time I ever heard this, that someone Googled the mindfulness and my picture popped up. So that was kind of funny to me. But in that presentation, I presented a lot of brain science, not this in depth, but a little bit, so that they can understand, okay, this is the reason why it's necessary. So that you can look past taking time away or look past another initiative. You can look past something that they feel won't work, quote unquote, because they don't do it or they don't believe in it. So it was about the brain science. So it is a definite connection, especially when this practice helps the brain to further develop so that now those children can move from the basement to the penthouse.
Yeah, and then I would just add that over the last 3 years, we've seen nearly a third reduction in our disciplinary rates, as well as out-of-school suspensions, and largely because we wanted to actually engage in the practice of really helping the students reason through as we went through the process of dealing with discipline, not just a punishment. So that's big. I think it goes hand in hand.
I think there's a question, yes.
I work in a level 5 school locally, emotional autism, and we are incorporating mindfulness.
Good.
Teachers have brought in, but the level 5 high school, middle school kids who are really not buying in. So what are some strategies that you guys did to get the students involved?
Consistency, you guys. Consistency. Our third year, we saw dips in the data and how we were going about the business in our third year. So we still had to make adjustments. But the key to it, to anybody, and those of you who are in schools, you know, whether it's new teachers, but especially veteran teachers, here comes another program. Or here comes another principal. Right? I'm gonna outlast him. I'm gonna outlast this program. I've seen it before. So when the teachers started to see that it wasn't going anywhere, when the students started to see it wasn't going anywhere, when students started to see other students, so this student may not do it in the classroom with everybody when it's coming over to PA, but that student will go down to the mindfulness room and do it with the staff, right? Because they started understanding that it's helping me. And then when I hear him saying that it helps him, okay, well, it might be something to it because he thinks it works. So it's just being consistent with it. Be consistent.
Yes.
My question is, how do you get any pushback from parents on the parental side of it? Sometimes, you have different faiths and
Sure.
people don't understand.
Okay. With all due respect to parents, I'm a parent too. Parents not in my building, okay? And it's something that is necessary, just like me telling your child that you need to go to this tutor to pass this English test to graduate. It's the same thing. And if it's something that's necessary for their development as human beings, if a parent does not want that for their child, they can always take their child out of my school, because it's not about what the parents want. I'm saying this with all due respect, because when you're in charge of 1,200 young people, as well as 140 adults, you have to make decisions that you're comfortable with, that you have enough courage to implement and do, despite any pushback from central office, from teachers, from children, from parents, from community, period. Because if it's in my spirit to do this, my spirit ain't wrong. And I go with it.
And also what we try to do is really just work at practicing the art of sense making with families, and making sure that they understand, get a full picture of what we're doing. And that really, what we found has helped increase the comfort level and the comfortability with the program. We're in the early stages of mindfulness. We're not as advanced as you guys are right now in Baltimore, but Dallas is on the way with that program, and we're in the early stages. And that's been a big piece, is just galvanizing bringing all the stakeholders together, make sure everyone's clear on really the purpose, knowing the why behind the what, and then we can get to the how. But first, we have to make sure everyone understands the why.
Yes.
Knowing that it's easier to build children than to fix people, what about elementary schools? It's much easier to, they're still coming to us traumatized. They're in the same families as these older kids. But if we can get the correction and get them already doing the higher order learning skills and also practicing mindfulness, why not shift some of this down to primary?
So, Mr. Smith, I think that your institute does work with some elementary schools. Am I correct?
Yeah, we work with a ton of elementary schools. We start as young as pre-K in the school system, and we try to get them as early as possible. And I think we're giving them life skills, you know what I mean? And the earlier they learn them and learn to use them in practical life situations, like, they're going to keep using them. And there are a lot of kids we work with, we may have seen 10 years ago when they were in first grade, and now they're in high school, and they still use the practices because they work and life gets more stressful. So we definitely try to catch them as early as possible, whenever we can.
And Dr. Gemino,
Yes, regarding higher order thinking skills in elementary school students, developmentally, those students are not yet ready for those skills. They can start to wrap their heads around it, but they are not ready to produce a deeper meaning. Our research shows that, as do others. And so we focused on this age in the middle school years primarily because it's kind of the black hole of education. No offense to middle school teachers and principals, but they're almost completely ignored, and they go from being coddled in elementary school, and then in middle school suddenly they're supposed to act like young adults, and they don't. They're pretty squirrely. But it's a good time with all that brain development to help really get them focused and understanding reasoning. I mean, think about yourselves in college. Did you not sit around and discuss the philosophy and the meaning of life? You know, you didn't do that when you were 10. Your brain was not at that point of development.
Yes.
I'm Ellen Nowinski with the Bezos Family Foundation, and we've actually developed an initiative after 17 years of looking at the research that does teach parents and teachers birth through 8 years old with a focus on executive function skills. For example, in all of the schools in Providence, all the families and all of the bus driver and the school cafeteria worker gets this, and our random controlled trial results are good. So you can do it with a focus on executive function skills.
that is a really important point, because I know at Kennedy Krieger, we are very, very serious about developing executive functioning skills in students in schools and certainly at the Institute, and for teachers to understand how to implement with students executive functioning skills.
Just one other point, we're taking a sectorial approach, so it's not just education. We're developing a program with Mount Sinai so that pediatricians and healthcare workers who see children birth through 3 also know how to promote these skills. We're working with museums and libraries, so we're trying to make sure that this is a culture shift, not just in the school,
Right.
but in the community.
Yeah.
And it's a sectorial approach.
So I know that we're at conclusion, so I want to leave you with 2 great challenges that I find for American education. One is, today we've heard from two hero principals. How do we institutionalize at their schools these practices that have demonstrated such success if they were to exit tomorrow? And that is a problem we have in American education. We have heroes and heroines, and when they leave, it collapses. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, for successful practices, how do we scale it so it isn't one model that stands alone? So thank you so much for being here. And please, let's applaud our presenter.